Hello and welcome back to the Ladies Wrestling Real podcast. It is so good to be back for another week. We are knee deep into December, into this holiday season, and it's really good to reflect back on the year that we had in all parts of our lives. But as wrestling fans, it is really good to reflect on what we really loved about wrestling for this year, and I really wanted to talk about one of my favorite um, weekly programming that I've had over the past few years and reflect on it in a positive way. And that would be about NXT UK. And I was very, very sad when I heard about NXT UK shutting down, but I totally get and I am fully excited about what's going to happen as they transition into NXT Europe because it really opens the doors up for them to have even more talent from Europe that we can really become fans of, and that can really get the ability to have their footing with getting more press and more exposure to their brand of wrestling without constantly having to come to America and get signed under the main roster or completely having to uproot. They can have their own placing in NXT Europe and get that type of exposure on WWE programming to really get out to the masses. So I am excited about that. So this is not anything that's going to be a downer. It's going to be exciting because even though NXT UK is defunct, we are going to get some new content, probably with the same wrestlers that were in NXT UK. Some of them have transitioned to NXT in the US, and that's totally fine because they definitely deserve to get those opportunities and not have a break in their momentum as wrestlers. So let's just dig into this rich history of NXT UK Women's Championship. Even though it only existed for 4 years, there was some great stuff that was done. So far, the history of the NXT UK Women's Heavyweight Championship really started from the success of the men's NXT UK men's tournament that happened in 2016. And because of that success, immediately after that men's tournament, it was already pretty much determined that they were going to capitalize on that success. And to be honest, the men's tournament was a soft opening for US fans and fans all over the world that had WWE Network. I miss WWE Network so bad. I know people outside of the US have it, but boy, do I miss it. But it was a soft opening with the tournament that the men had back in 2016 to really get fans used to what they could see when NXT UK was going to become a thing. So it was announced in a press conference in December 15th of 2016 that there would be a UK-based brand established. And naturally, if you're going to have the men be represented in this promotion, especially because this was the beginnings of WWE really establishing that they were going to, I'm not going to say be at the forefront. They were joining the bandwagon of promotions that already did a great job of showcasing women's wrestling. WWE was now becoming a part of that. So naturally, with this announcement of a UK-based brand, it just made sense that eventually they would have a women's championship, and the women really deserved to be able to tear it up in the ring and have their own gold too. So finally, on this of June 18th of 2018, a 2-day eight women's elimination match was made to crown the inaugural championship for the women, and it was a great tournament. And after a hard fought match with Tony Storm, Rhea Ripley was awarded to be the first NXT UK Women's Champion. And this already helped to solidify that this brand needed to have the attention of everyone because they were coming out swinging with like some great talent. And it really showed a lot of promise to what NXT UK and wrestlers in the UK had to offer. So let's talk about, before I start getting into some great feuds and the pretty much the timeline of the NXT Women's Championship, NXT UK Women's Championship, let's talk about the history of the UK Women's Champions. We had Rhea Ripley, as I just said, that was the first NXT UK Women's Champion. Then you had Toni Storm, who had a great run. It wasn't the longest run, but she really helped to build the foundation of what NXT UK Women's Championships would be. Kaylee Ray, who had the longest reign at 649 days. And boy, did she deserve that championship with every single day that she reigned. She was an amazing champion, and it was kind of hard to see her lose the title, but they did it so well that you couldn't be mad at her having to get rid of the title. And our most distinguished, yet our last NXT UK Women's Champion, Meiko Satomura, who I don't think you could say enough to the elegance, the precision, the experience, and the respect that someone like Meiko has for the business. I think that with those four champions and then capping it off with Meiko, it just really showed the great care and detail that went into planning and the reasoning on why each woman was the champion for the time that they were and why they deserve to be at the head of the women's division with holding the titles. This is just a stellar lineup of champions. And though we won't have more champions for the NXT UK sector, I think with capping it off with those women is certainly impressive, and it's a great way to go with having that type of history of champions. So let's just get right into why these women were such great champions was because they had such great feuds. And we got to start off with what helped to jump this off, what helped to really get people to talk about the NXT UK Women's Championship. And that started off, as I mentioned, with the 8 women's tournament. And I think that this feud between Toni Storm and Rhea Ripley really helped to solidify what type of feuds you were going to see, how they were going to draw off of past feuds or interactions that the women had to create stories and really get fans invested. And I think that NXT UK was very good at creating strong stories and really letting, and I'm assuming that they had to have let the talent really decide why they felt like whatever feud they were in mattered, because they were really drawing off of past feelings or relationships that they had or interactions that they had with their opponents from other promotions. That I think was really good. I like that collaboration that you saw from other promotions to allow them to bring in and tie in past stories. And I think this really helped with Toni Storm and Rhea Ripley, because I liked how Toni Storm had already established herself in many ways around the world. So when we even saw that with both the Mae Young Classics, that Toni was already seen around the world as someone that was a star, and WWE was so lucky, to have her in the Mae Young Classic. And I felt that that was true because I was certainly a fan of Toni Storm before she came in to do the Mae Young Classics. And when Rhea came in, you could see that she was on a crossroad to see where she wanted to go in wrestling, what type of style she wanted, including her wrestling style and her look, what she wanted to look like, how she wanted people to perceive her based off of being able to use a look to make people have a first impression of you. And you could see that transition between both Mae Young Classics. And the first Mae Young Classic, Rhea Ripley has been vocal about saying that people kept comparing her to Charlotte Flair. She had the long blonde hair. Um, she had the wide-eyed, bubbly personality when she first was introduced to WWE fans from the first Mae Young Classic. So I think that kind of grind her gears because she naturally no one wants to be compared to some, especially when you're getting compared as if you're trying to take from that person's style and that you're almost ripping that off. So I think with the second Mae Young Classic and that stretch of time before that, Rio was really starting to build herself up as having this new, fresh character on the indie scene and internationally. So when she came back for the second Mae Young Classic, you saw a completely different character, a completely different mindset than what you saw. A very confident, cocky brawler almost because she was taking it to the women. She was using her size. Um, and really, and also that hard hitting style that she was starting to develop to really take it to this woman and show, like, yeah, I actually embrace that I have a chip on my shoulder. Because when I came here before, you guys kept comparing me to Charlotte Flair. Well, I'm going to show you who Rhea Ripley is. And I think that that just crossed over to Rhea seeing and having her eyes on the NXT UK gold and really showing that she was going to take this opportunity to be able to take this women's championship and really help to build it. And I think that there's something to go with really getting excited, I'm sure, as a wrestler, to know that you're building up a championship that has never been established before, and you're setting the tone, you're setting the foundation for what that title will represent. And it seemed like Rhea really had that attitude as well, that there was a sense of pride that this championship was also representing um, her stomping grounds and really showing what the NXT UK women had to represent. And she wanted to be the head of that. And she wasn't going to let this fandom that people had for Toni Storm stand in the way of her getting what she felt was hers. So this feud, this match that helped to show who was going to be the inaugural champion was so important for setting this foundation for what NXT UK was going to be. And I think that these women knocked it out of the park because it really helped to continue to show why Toni Storm was so good. But then it really started to get people to talk about Rhea Ripley and show that it wasn't a fluke. That type of fanfare that she got from being in the second Mae Young Classic, and how people started to see Rhea for her own individual personality and what she had to bring in the ring. She capitalized on that with this title shot, and she really made herself in NXT UK those months ahead, so much that she became a hot commodity, and NXT US really wanted to have her after that. And we all know what happened when she came to the US and was NXT. Everything is history after that. And we're still talking about how great Rhea Ripley is. And honestly, I think that she's just getting started. So knowing that Rhea was the first NXT UK champion really just shows how prominent this title is. Let's get into the Kaylee Ray Toni Storm match that helped to well, hold on, let's backtrack a little bit. After Rhea Ripley had her time to be the champion and really helped to set off what NXT UK was going to be, Toni Storm was able to become champion not that long after that. But as I just stated, with the type of success that Toni had already and how she was already a hot commodity when she was in the Mae Young Classics, everyone knew that she was going to either go to the main roster in WWE or she was going to be in NXT US. So we knew that she wasn't going to stay too long in NXT UK, but what she did, like I said, you have to have strong hands to really build up a division, and Toni Storm did that. So I'm assuming the next thought in the higher ups and bookers of NXT UK was that they needed a strong champion that they knew was going to stay and really continue to build up the division. And they made such a great choice in getting one of my favorite wrestlers, Kaylee Ray, to hold that title. And man, the type of feud that Ray had with Tony Storm to really help to transition into what this next champion would be was perfect. And Tony really helped, I think, to really make Kaylee Ray that vicious champion that they needed. And I think with Tony being so over with the fans and everyone just loving her, having someone like Kaylee Ray to just make it clear, I could care less about what the fans think. I could care less about someone wanting me to be the champion. It does not matter. I will get it because I don't have any problem with taking you apart to get the title. And this feud between Kaylee Ray and Tony Storm really had two pivotal points, I feel, in it. And one was when Kaylee Ray won the NXT UK title and NXT TakeOver Cardiff. And this was in August of 2019. And I think that this was a very important time in Kaylee Ray getting the title and for the NXT UK Women's Championship history as a whole, because this was to me a very smooth transition. And sometimes you don't always have that with certain titles. Sometimes you can have where the title switch hands, but as a fan, you're not really feeling the transition and you kind of want to keep the champion that you have. But I think that it did well how the bookers planned it, where you had someone that the fans would actually really get behind as a very strong champion to follow after such a great reign that Tony Storm had. So this match was really important. And everyone that usually was an NXT UK fan had already seen Kaylee Ray and Tony Storm fight before in promotions like Pro Wrestling Eve or ICW. But a lot of fans from the US that was getting into NXT UK, they needed to know why Kaylee Ray, the scary Queen of Scots, would be a great champion. And I really think that this feud really helped that. And I like how it just made a smooth transition from going to what Tony was, becoming over the past few years before this, which was that she was a really strong baby face, to go into having such a heel of a champion. You needed to have the type of feud that they had. And I think after this NXT TakeOver match, they needed to have the I Quit match to really show how vicious and how vile Kaylee Ray was going to be as a performer, and most importantly, as the head of the division with having the championship. And it really became a match where you were going to see not if someone was going to quit, but if Tony Storm would even make it out of that match alive. And I think that that was such a brutal and properly executed I Quit match, because many times now you see people going to the extreme many times in matches where it's not really warranted. It doesn't make sense, and it starts to take away the luster and the passion for fans to even see I Quit matches. But it was done well in this match. And the reason why it was is because, just like I said, one of the strengths of NXT UK is that they actually build up feuds. They draw from experiences that these fans have, these wrestlers have already had, and they really make that into something that is a continuation of their interaction as performers. And Kaylee Ray was really building off of, I believe, what she felt was kind of being left out of those conversations about who could head up the NXT UK division. I think that because everyone was talking about the Tony Storms and the Rhea Ripleys, many times Kaylee Ray was left out of those conversations. And I think that also, even on the men's side, a lot of the Scottish-born wrestlers had a chip on their shoulder because they felt like a lot of the English wrestlers were getting that attention as people that could be the head of the division. And I feel like Kayla Ray was no different. There was a chip that she had on her shoulder. And I feel that with the type of predatory behavior that she was showing these matches, especially with Toni Storm, who was really over with fans and really a baby face. I think that she was showing how her reign was going to be and how terrifying this would be. And it was just brilliant. And it really already set the tone um, of how Kaylee Ray's long and illustrious reign was going to be. And I like how uh, the bookers were already making it clear this is Kaylee Ray's next feud because with Tony's vicious beating that she received in this match with Kaylee Ray, you saw Piper Niven come to her rescue and try to make sure that she could get her to the back and, keep her safe after Kaylee Ray just continuously went on the attack, even after the match was over. And they just smoothly transitioned into what I feel was Kaylee Ray's best feud during her reign, which was with Piper Niven. And for some wrestling fans that may not have watched NXT UK, Piper Niven, what has now her name has been changed to Dewdrop, and she's been doing an amazing job on the main roster. But this time, when Piper Niven was in NXT UK, I think she really capitalized on having some great feuds. And this feud with Kaylee Ray was so good because I feel like it really took advantage of bringing up the personal relationship that Kaylee Ray and Piper had. And once again, not hiding from the fact that they had already performed in certain promotions like Pro Wrestling Eve and ICW and street fights, steel cage matches, all these different type of matches that these women had, and how personal this was for Piper Niven to see that the type of integrity or respect that you're supposed to have for your fellow wrestler was not exhibited at all in the feud with Toni Storm. I just thought was perfect because for Piper Niven, she was seeing someone that was such a great friend outside of wrestling really start to snap and feel like there are no rules anymore to really protecting and taking care of your opponent. And I thought that was great that they were kind of, picking on and really tapping into the connection, the real connection that Piper Niven and Kaylee Ray had outside of the ring, but really showing how much of a connection that they have inside of the ring. Because when you look at that feud, there's so many times in the matches where you could tell that both opponents knew what the other was going to do before they did it. And that's why it made it so hard for either one of them to get a leg up on one another. Kaylee Ray always found a way to get the leg up by using the most conniving and vicious attacks to get it. But you could really tell that both women just wanted to refuse to quit because to them there was so much right on the line. Kaylee Ray was not going to give up that title. You were not going to get that from her. And Piper Niven didn't want to feel like someone like someone like Kaylee Ray could continue to hold the title when she was doing such horrible things to continue to keep the title. So this was such a strong feud. And I would certainly say for myself, someone that really loves stories on top of the wrestling, that this was one of my favorite feuds over the past few years because of how much they really relied on real emotion into this so that it really made you feel something when Piper would have a look of dismay and just portrayal. Like she felt a deep sense of betrayal for who her friend had become because she was so driven to hold this title, because she was so driven to prove that she shouldn't be an afterthought when people were thinking of someone that would be championship material. So really good stuff there with the Kaylee Ray and Piper Niven feud that really helped to solidify Kaylee Ray's title reign. And as we go into the latter part of Kaylee Ray's championship title reign, we have to bring up the dethroning of Kaylee Ray with her encounter with Mako Sanomura. This was such a great build up to Mako coming into the company. Obviously, we know that Sanomura has experience not only as such a legendary wrestler that has been in the business for so long, but she is also a promoter. And she definitely has added to amazing women that can really train the next generation. So, with all of that coming into it, that build up that NXT UK had from Mako, where they were making it clear that they had to import someone to come in to take out Kaylee Ray because apparently no one else on the roster could take Kaylee Ray out and dethrone her. So I loved that they did that and the type of esteem and reverence that they have for Mako was just awesome. And you can see that with the vignettes and the build up to Mako coming in. The final boss, the one that you will not come out of alive with getting in the ring with her, was just brilliantly done because you could see that they're really trying to make it clear that Kaylee Ray's reign was on borrowed time until Mako actually got into the ring with Kaylee Ray. And even though Kaylee Ray was trying to show a level of confidence, and sure, she definitely had that, there had to be some level of anxiety knowing that she was going to get in a ring with such a legend. And at, as we know, at that point, Kaylee Ray was just knocking out the competition. She was completely on top of her mountain, and she never thought that she would come down. So with this signing of Mako, you could tell that she knew that her days were numbered. She wouldn't admit it out loud, but she knew. And this match was so great because both women had something that they could not lose. Mako can come in and lose such a high profiled match when the buildup was that strong. And Kaylee Ray had had the title for so long that it essentially at that point becomes a part of you. So you can't really feel that you can even part with that. So I just thought that that was such a great focal point to tap into on why both women needed to win so much. And as we know, this was the match that Kaylee Ray lost her title in. But we all knew, especially with the buzz that went around Kaylee Ray after she came in for a stint to NXT US to be in the War Games match, and she was kind of hinting towards wanting to feud with a lot of women that were on the US version of NXT, that she was going to go to NXT US soon. So it made sense that you'd have someone like Mako dethrone her. And they did it in such a brilliant way that as much as I loved Kaylee Ray's title reign, it was brilliantly done. And I certainly cannot complain about the amount of time and the brilliantly executed feuds that Kaylee Ray had during her title reign. So after this loss for Kaylee Ray, that brings us into the reign of Miko Sanomura. And as we know, because NXT now is kaput, it wasn't a super long reign, but I think that Mako's reign was different because it helped to solidify how she was going to help to build up the younger talent that could help make the division great too. And that started off with Mako's feud with Blair Davenport. And Blair received a ton of success in Japan. And she maybe thought that that qualified her to be leaps and bounds ahead of Mako. And Mako saw this as an opportunity to put this newcomer in her place. And a series of matches proved that these women were must-see TV. Coming off of a winning streak in NXT UK during her first few months, Blair started to feel comfortable in her ability to gain victories. So she decided that it was appropriate to challenge the final boss. And After she unsuccessfully went against Miko in the January 6th episode of NXT UK of this year, the ladies decided to raise the stakes, and their feud had reached a climax that needed to be concluded with a Japanese street fight, which took place on February 3rd of this year. And I believe that this feud could have lasted much longer, and it probably would have, especially the way that they left off that match if Blair wouldn't have suffered an injury during the match. I think that they could have just continued to go on and on with this because there was much unfinished business you can see with this. And if you have not seen this Japanese street fight between Blair Davenport and Mako Satomura, I highly recommend it. I would put it on my list of best matches from 2022. I don't think that Mako can have a match that I probably wouldn't say wouldn't go into a top 10 list or what have you. But this match was really good because, as I said, the strength of NXT UK, the build up to high stake matches. They don't always pull them out every week. So when you do see these big stake matches like I Quit or Japanese street fights, or I don't think they ever had a steel cage match, but just for example, if they had a match like that, these matches all came when you were getting to the end of a feud, a match to just settle it all. And I think that that's the only time when those matches are needed. And even when you're having these matches, it shouldn't be for gore, gore, gore. It should still be a strong story that's showing that when intense moments happen in the match, it's because they also build up to those moments and the emotions are high at that point. And I think that this Japanese street fight between Blair and Miko really did that. And it really helped to build up Blair as a strong contender for the title. But as we know, sometimes in wrestling, injuries happen, and that's exactly what happened to Blair. But she was on a strong roll. She has really good promo skills as well as in-ring talent. So that really could have been something that if NXT UK would have gone on, that could have been something that really could have separated Blair from the others because she has her own unique character. And I know that she is now NXT US, but there was something about her time in NXT UK that I felt like whoever was behind what they were doing, they really understood her character, versus trying to make her into like some weird chick that you kind of see now in NXT UK, where they don't really get her type of calculated, sarcastic behavior, and they just kind of paint a very one-dimensional picture of her. So hopefully, I can see a little bit of change because obviously the in-ring work shows for itself. But even the way that they had Blair come in as if like she was a peon to the to even daring to be a part of the NXT US Women's Championship when Mako and Mandy Rose came together. I did not get the point of them just throwing Blair into it because it immediately solidified that on the US NXT brand, she really wasn't anyone to really look at. And I wasn't okay with that because I felt like NXT UK was really building her up to be someone. So hopefully, maybe with the NXT Europe promotion, maybe Blair might go there. We'll see. But I think that this was a very strong feud for Miko to start her reign with. And that with Blair being injured, I think that they did a good job of bringing in someone else just as brilliant as Blair too, which was Isla Dawn. And I think that Dawn really had a drastic change to her character when she arrived in NXT UK. From other promotions that I saw in like Queens of Combat, that was a US based women's promotion, she had a bit of a different character, but it was kind of the early stages of what you saw in NXT UK, where there was a darkness surrounding her. And I know a lot of people use this word a lot, but I think it actually applies to someone like Isla Dawn's character, where there was a bit of an unhinged behavior and a new look that was a bit unsettling. in a good way where it's done right, that I think she really knew how to execute. The promos, the lighting, very goth type look, while also giving you kind of like I would say more of a Edgar Allan Poe type of promos and look to her work really helped to once again make her stand out from the other women that were on the roster. And I do love that women's wrestling has been taken seriously now, and we do have a lot of diversity, but sometimes with the promo work, people are not, solidifying themselves as being different, and they're not working on really building these high level characters that can easily be separated from other women. And I feel that Isla Dawn was doing that, and she really knew how to have that off the kilter type of character without it looking like a parody of something. So Isla was really coming into her own when she came into NXT UK. And I feel that Miko probably saw that and really thought, you know what, if I'm going to come off of this great feud with Blair, I need to capitalize on having someone like Isla be my next bit of competition. And since losing to Miko in her debut match, Isla seemed to let a bit of bitterness begin to fester. And especially after feeling that everyone thought naturally that Isla didn't stand a chance against the champ, she knew she had to prove herself. But it seemed like the way that she wanted to make sure that she could find a weakness with Mako was to get into Mako's head. And before that, no one had done that. And that was the brilliance to me of Isla finding something that worked for her. She knew that competitively, she could be in the match with Mako, but she knew that she couldn't be the stronger one out of the two. And maybe even in some ways that she couldn't last as long in the ring as someone that's so brilliantly trained as Satomura. But she knew if she got in her head, if she played mind games, if she could continue to create distractions that really made Miko scratch her head and wonder, like, what is it that you're bringing into this match that's creating this type of tension and eerie an area environment that could create upside for Dawn, and she was doing a really good job of that. For what reason the feud stopped, but I thought that this was a very strong feud for Mako as a champion because you could really see that she clearly understood that for her to have such a strong reign, she had to have equally strong competitors. And this, even though Miko was never a heel champion, this really made her a babyface in this feud, even more so because you had someone like Isla Dawn that was really just really off her rocker, but not in the way where you wanted to laugh and mock that and say, oh, it's just a silly character that needs to be locked up into an asylum somewhere. No, it was so calculated, her every move. Just like when she lost one of the matches with Mako and she decided that she was going to take the championship and really continue to egg on Satomura and send out promos and vignettes on how she has the title with her and how she's not letting it go. There was a continuous play on Satomura's mind. So I thought they could have done a lot more with that. And as we saw toward the end of Miko's title reign, and I think this is probably why Satomura and Dawn stopped their feud, was because at that time, toward the end of NXT UK, even on the men's side, they started to bring in a lot of developing NXT UK development to talent. And a lot of feuds just abruptly ended, and then they would bring in those US talent to have matches with some of the champions. And that happened with Saramura, where all of a sudden she was in a feud with Ivy Nile. And I think that might have been the reason why the Dawn and Saramura feud just abruptly ended. So you could tell that there were a lot of changes that was happening in NXT UK toward, I would say, like the last 2 months of Miko's feud, Miko's reign as champion, and it was a bit confusing what was happening in NXT UK. But all in all, Satomura's title reign was truly impressive, and that ends our conversation on the women's championship history in NXT UK. Of course, there were some great matches and great feuds that were outside of the NXT UK Women's Championship, but I think because, and I hope this doesn't happen, that what the women in NXT UK built and the great championship legacy that they built, even though it only lasted for 4 years, I think it made a huge impact. We're seeing women that are being used now on the main roster in WWE and in the US NXT sector of the company that have really built a huge fan base around their brand of wrestling. And a lot of them started off with really getting more attention and more exposure with holding the NXT UK title. So this truly should not be forgotten what these women put into this title. And yes, we are going to be moving into NXT Europe, and I think that there will be great opportunities for even more women to be able to show what they could do. This NXT UK, I was just going to use the word experiment because I think that it was a way for WWE to see what was out there, and I think that it really piqued their interest after they saw what NXT UK did. That they wanted to expand it and see what else could be out there, and to also not feel that everyone has to be under the NXT US brand, because then it just becomes too cluttered with talent. And also, there's such a great fan base in Europe. They're, to me, some of the best fans, that they deserve to be able to have that weekly programming that they can actually go see live and support, because they're some of the best WWE fans. They really love supporting WWE, so they deserve to have that. And obviously, they're great fans because a lot of them grow up to be great wrestlers that have, in this, I would say this decade, have really helped to contribute to what modern day fans love about wrestling. So, um, as I said, this is a fun look back at it because I know that NXT Europe is going to bring some more great talent. I'm pretty sure they're going to have a great women's division. So if you haven't checked out NXT UK and you haven't seen these great feuds, I always recommend that you go back and take some time and really look at a lot of these feuds and championship reigns that were discussed in this throughout December. We will continue to discuss some great things that happened in 2022, including best moments and best matches from women in wrestling in 2022. So stay tuned to that. Just like I said, if you haven't looked up these matches or feuds, or you just want to relive some of the great moments that were in NXT UK, I really recommend that you do that. And continue to stay tuned because we still have some great things that are in store for December 2022. And thank you once again for tuning into the Ladies Wrestling Grill podcast, and we'll be back soon.